What if the safest place to be yourself was an illegal bar? Hi there, I'm Chris with a K, and welcome back to This Week in Queer History, where we celebrate queer moments and icons that I wish I had known about as a young gay kid growing up in conservative America. This week, we're diving into how 1920s speakeasies became vibrant queer havens, the music that filled them, and why queer spaces, then and now, are essential for finding both community and our voices. So grab your fedora and your sense of curiosity, because this is a story about rebellion, resilience, and rhythm.
This week in queer history, stories told with love and glee.
Picture this, New York City, 1926. The streets above are all about reverence and prohibition. On the surface, America is still gripped by the 18th Amendment, making the sale, production, and transportation of alcohol illegal. And thanks to the Volstead Act, even a glass of wine at dinner is technically a crime. But just below street level, in basements, behind fake storefronts, and through unmarked doors, a whole different world is thriving. These hidden spaces were called speakeasies. The name came from the practice of speaking quietly about them so as to not attract the attention of law enforcement. And while many people remember them for bootleg gin and jazz, for queer folks, they meant something much deeper: safety, expression, and connection in an era that criminalized their very existence. Now, it wasn't like all speakeasies were queer havens. Plenty weren't. But many became the places where queer nightlife as we know it was born. Behind those guarded doors, societal rules loosened. Men danced with men, women flirted openly with women, and the artistry of drag, blues, and performance wove queerness into the very soundtrack of the Roaring '20s. If we're going to talk about queer speakeasies, we have to talk about Harlem. The Harlem Renaissance was in full swing. It was a cultural explosion of black art, music, literature, and new ideas. We're talking about 1920 to 1935. And Harlem wasn't just creating culture. It was rewriting the rules of who could be visible and how. Take the Rockland Palace at 280 West 155th Street, originally the Manhattan Casino. By day, it hosted political rallies, concerts, and lectures, but by night, it transformed into the site of the Hamilton Lodge Ball, famously dubbed the Faggots Ball by sensationalist tabloids. These events drew thousands, sometimes up to 8,000 people to watch and participate in grand drag competitions. Say thank you, RuPaul. Langston Hughes himself described the spectacle of Harlem's drag balls, society's elite, from Alelia Walker to Tallulah Bankhead, perched in balcony boxes looking down at the dancers, who might be dressed in anything from sequin gowns to barely there silver sandals and body paint. It wasn't underground in the way that we think. It was flamboyantly public. And in the 1920s, that was radical. If Rockland Palace was the ballroom epicenter, Harry Hansberry's Clam House, nicknamed Gladys's Clam House, was the piano bar heart of Harlem's queer scene. Tucked away on West 133rd Street, in an area called Jungle Alley, the Clam House was famous for one reason above all: Gladys Bentley. Gladys was a black lesbian blues singer who blew the roof off every night. Picture her in a crisp white tuxedo and top hat, pounding the piano, belting bawdy songs about love between women, and openly flirting with the ladies in the audience. She reworked popular tunes to include references to sissies and bulldaggers at a time when these words were rarely heard beyond insults. Her charisma was so magnetic that the venue actually changed its name to Barbara's Exclusive Club after her alter ego, Barbara Bobby Minton. She was living proof that not only could queer performers thrive, but that audiences would pack the house for them. Meanwhile, just up the street, the Savoy Ballroom was redefining what a dance hall could be. Located at 596 Lenox Avenue, it opened in 1926 and broke all the norms by being racially integrated from day one. Black and white patrons shared the same floor, dancing to the emerging sounds of swing. The Savoy also embraced drag culture, hosting lavish balls with gender-bending performances. Judges, often celebrities or patrons of the arts, awarded prizes for the most spectacular costumes. One contestant famously performed wearing nothing but a decorative G-string, silver sandals, and green body paint. The Savoy stayed open until 5 a.m., which gave queer people a longer window to connect, free from the racial and homophobic harassment that they might encounter elsewhere. This wasn't just nightlife. This was a sanctuary. And you can't talk about music in queer speakeasies without talking about Ma Rainey, the mother of the blues. Born Gertrude Pridgett in 1886, she was a powerhouse. Over 100 recordings, a gravelly, commanding voice, and a stage presence so bold she made feather boas look like armor. She also lived her life on her own terms. Ma was bisexual, and her 1928 song, Prove It On Me Blues, didn't just hint at same-sex attraction, it put it front and center. She was arrested in 1925 for hosting a party for women in her chorus, rumored to have been sexual in nature, and she was bailed out by fellow blues legend Bessie Smith, who was also rumored to be her lover. Ma's songs were staples in speakeasy culture. They combined humor, heartbreak, and defiance. And in venues like the Clam House, her lyrics invited winks and nods to those in the know. She wasn't just entertaining, she was validating the lives of queer listeners. But what happened in Harlem wasn't just contained to Harlem. In the late 1920s and early 30s, the Pansy craze swept across major cities. Queer performers, often called pansy or fairy acts, filled clubs in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And this was more than a fad. It was a rare period when gender nonconforming and openly queer entertainers could work relatively openly, often becoming the star attraction of the club. Many of these performances took place in speakeasies, where the blend of prohibition culture and queer expression created a perfect storm for innovation. And it's important to remember, these weren't just places to drink and dance. For queer people in the 1920s, they were lifelines. And at that time, homosexuality was criminalized, and being out could mean losing your job, your home, your family. And in that context, a speakeasy where you could dance with someone of the same gender or hear a singer joke openly about queer love wasn't just a party. It was an act of resistance. These spaces built communities that outlasted them. Friendships formed there would lay the groundwork for LGBTQ rights movements decades later. And even though many of these venues were demolished, Rockland Palace became a parking lot, the Savoy replaced by apartments, their legacies are still with us today. Sometimes I think about how our modern day queer spaces have always felt a little bit rebellious, a little underground, a little sacred, kind of like the speakeasies of the 1920s. They were hidden havens where people could be themselves, dance freely, and escape the suffocating rules of the outside world. For LGBTQ people, those kinds of spaces have always been more than just places to gather. They've been sanctuaries. I was really lucky because in college I found our LGBTQ club, Pride, and it wasn't just about rainbows and rallies. That group was about friendship and identity and survival. And some of the people that I met there, they fundamentally changed who I was and gave me the safety to become who I was meant to be. And then there were the clubs I snuck into before I was technically allowed to be there. Places like The Sun and Bricks. That's where I first saw what queer joy looked like in motion. Sweaty, glittery, defiant, and free. And getting a job at the Club Zippers in Salt Lake City was the first time I worked in a gay space. And that mattered. It wasn't just about earning a paycheck. It was about being surrounded by people who got it. People who could wink and nod at your inside jokes and your outside identity without judgment. It made every shift feel like home. And later, I found more community online, and I realized that we are everywhere, and not just surviving, but thriving, creating, building, and loving. And the digital world became its own kind of speakeasy for me. It was buzzing with queerness in every thread, every playlist, and every late night chat. Music was a huge part of that too. When I first heard the Indigo Girls in college, it felt like a door opening. Their lyrics painted pictures of love and longing that I didn't have to rewrite in my head to make sense. I've got a whole video about them. The link is up above and you can check them out. I love the Indigo Girls. And I mean, there's George Michael, there's Elton John, Madonna, all of them gave me soundtracks that felt like they were made for me. Inclusive, honest, bold. They transcended the straight lines that I was taught to walk and helped me dance in the curbs instead. Without these spaces, both physical and emotional, both real and metaphorical, I don't know where I would be. They weren't always easy to find, but when I did, they lit me up from the inside, just like the speakeasies of the past. They offered refuge, community, resistance, and joy. And for that, I am endlessly grateful. So if you're watching this and wondering where to find that kind of connection, start looking. Maybe it's your local LGBTQ center. Maybe it's a pride group on your college campus. Maybe it's a drag night at a bar or a queer Discord server, or even a group chat that you start yourself. Whatever it is, find your people or create the space and invite them in. Because when we connect and we create community, that's where we begin to truly blossom into who we are meant to be. So what do you think? Could you have thrived in the speakeasy days of the 1920s? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to check out the video that's popping up right over here for more queer history. And if you want to know the queer events and icons that happened on your birthday, check out myqueerbirthday.com. The link is down in the description. Until next time, stay strong, stay bold, and keep making history.